Hello and welcome back. We will be discussing organizational leadership. Again, if you have not downloaded your guide, please do so. I also updated it, so we're in day 4. So if you haven't downloaded the most recent one as of day 4, then you should, okay, or re-download it. All right. So day 4, we're talking about organizational leadership. Organizational leadership is far most my favorite topic. It is my favorite topic because I believe a lot of organizations around the world, not just believers who run organizations, but individuals and organizations find a decline in integral leadership. We see these memes around saying, "Oh, I don't like to work for this type of supervisor." I won't give the description of the supervisor that people are seeing like, oh no, I would never work with that type of supervisor. But I'll leave you to imagine, okay? Um, and it's a reflection of who we are, and it is a reflection of that type of leader coming into a workplace or coming into their organization and with the attitude, with the mindset, with the energy of just grumpy and mean, right? So when we talk about organizational leadership, we're talking about people who you may not be a leader. Let's say you are a supervisor, or let's say you've experienced this type of leadership. I want to challenge you to think about how consecration can change the dynamics of that leadership, right? If that person led a consecrated life, or even if they can't understand the dynamics of a consecrated life, you can, right? So this specific topic, I'm talking about organizational leaders. And the biblical mentor that I'm going to use is Nehemiah. And then we're going to be referencing Nehemiah 1 through 6. It's about consecration and systems and structures. So we all, at some point, whether it's volunteer work, whether this is something that you do, whether you're a part of a church or a part of a program or whatever, and there it's an organization, and you see people and they have these nasty dispositions about themselves, or I mean, they're just not a great of a leader, right? So why leaders need to consecrate in the shadows is what we're getting into. So the shadows is nobody sees us, right? Nobody sees you consecrating, crying, praying, etc. Um, behind closed doors, right? They only see how you show up. So sometimes we show up, and I don't know if you guys ever had great customer service. You go to a restaurant and you see this waitress or waiter is like amazing. They're smiling. They're like, "How can I help you?" Whatever. They You want to come back to this organization, right? You want to be a part of what type of training that they have here. So this particular biblical mentor is Nehemiah. And what I love about Nehemiah is he was not the king, but he was the king's cupbearer, meaning he was a servant, right? He served. He didn't have a fancy title. He didn't have a clergy title, but what he did have was consecration. And it showed the way he served. It showed the way that he responded in emergency times. It showed the way he responded even during times of chaos. So when we're talking about organizational leadership and we have leaders who are in position, the Bible say pray for those. Pray for them. No, don't condemn them. Don't be like, oh man, this person sucks as a leader. But we want to pray for them because maybe they don't have the art of consecration, and maybe they're too busy to consecrate. And you have people who are so anointed, they are like really anointed, but they are not consecrated. And I think that's where the disruption comes in. That is, you are a great leader, you know how to lead, but we can tell you have not been with God, because if you had been with God, you would not have responded in that way, or it wouldn't be a constant turbulence when it comes to the way that you lead. You will be on time most of the time. Not, we will have a reverence, you will have some integrity, you'll have some form of diligence about the assignments or the mantles or the anointing or the gift that God has given you, right? So when you're running organizations, there are different type of leaders. You have servant leaders, you have dictators, you have leaders who are They lead from behind. You have leaders who will lead from the side, meaning that they work amongst the team. You have leaders who will say, "I'll step in. You go handle whatever happened at home." And then you have some leaders who are just like, "No, I'm the leader, and you're the follower, and you'll do what I say." You have some leaders that work collaboratively. And so when we're talking about organizational leadership, we're talking about the fruit of that organization. Bottom line. I mean, and again, that organization can be your business, that organization can be your church, that organization can be different areas that you manage, your nonprofit organization. Where is the fruit and evidence of God on this organization? And that's what we need to talk about. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it because it makes them feel uncomfortable. But for every organizational leader out there who is trying to please God in some form or fashion, please take time to consecrate. Ask God, which ways can I better serve my people that you have placed to help me? And also ask God, what is a place, what is an opportunity that I can grow? Right. So is my organization constantly going dry? Is my books in my organization constantly being mismanaged? Ask God and ask Him to send you the resources and the help to run your organization. Now, you may not be the head leader in charge of that organization. For example, I myself, a part of my spiritual mom's church. I was a part of the usher board. I was a part of the administrative board. I was a part of different areas, right? We'll just say that. So I was not the pastor, but if I'm the head of administration, then we should have a Kanban system going. We should have something going where it can show that this organization is thriving in administration, for example. I'm not over, let's say, the choir. So I have no control or no influence over the choir except for what the choir sees me doing in administration, for example. These are just examples. Now, if you own your own organization, of course, everybody's going to be looking to the top, like, what is the leader doing? Right? Because you may not have people in departmental functions. You may be the only person in the organization. So then you take a step back and say, God, help me run my organization smoothly. Help me not to hurt people who's trying to help. Help me to build up the people that you have sent in this organization. Right. And again, this can be departmentalized, or this can be even as the pastor or the leader of the organization. We have to get before God. You have to consecrate, because when things arise, you'll respond the way that God intended you to respond, not with your own conscience. And what I love about even in the book of Nehemiah, when all the turmoil came down, he didn't panic because he knew already who was coming against him. He already knew who looked the part but wasn't the part. He knew who was sowing discord. He understood that because he had already been with God. And one of my favorite parts about this the parables of Nehemiah and the organizational leadership is he was leading people that he didn't even know. Like, when I say he didn't know them, they were of him, like they were of his family lineage. Different tribes and clans came together to build this wall, to complete this project, right? And Nehemiah knew them only by their fruit, their heart, their desire to want to build this project, right? So he didn't know them personally, per se, and he was leading hundreds of people, from different parts of that area who had been scattered. But the point is, they saw him as a leader. And when you are a leader, it's easy for people to follow. And then you'll have those who wants to disrupt the program. And what I love about Nehemiah was when the contenders or the people came up against him, and then they wanted to meet, and he says, hey, listen, I don't have time. I'm not going to stop what I'm doing to come meet with you. Who are you for me to stop doing the work to come meet with you? And a lot of times we want to say, oh, this is humility. No, you have to make sure that you're in consecration with God. That means you die to whatever you feel is best, and you meet before God and you ask God, what's the time frame? Because Nehemiah knew he had to get back and serve. So he had no time to be politically correct at that moment, or he had no time to try to tickle anybody's fancy. As an organizational leader, there are some decisions that you're going to have to make that's going to make other people uncomfortable. But woe unto you if you make God feel disappointed in the assignment that He has trusted you with in a certain time frame. right? So leaders have to make tough decisions. Leaders have to make decisions when we talk about leaders, let's take it back in. When I'm talking about organizational leadership and consecration, I'm talking about believers. I'm not talking about just my MBA business. No, I'm talking about believers who believe the will and the perfect will of God. So if your organization is running dysfunctionally and you have a supervisor or you have someone on your team who you know isn't doing the best they could be doing, as the organizational leader, you are required to consecrate before God. You are required to go before God and see, is this person here to sabotage the organization, or is this person here to build the organization? And as an organizational leader, you might not always be doing everything right. So that's why God will send helpers. God will send help to you. But if you can't see that because of a lack of consecration, God will begin to move people away from you. And now you're like, oh man, I have nobody to help me. But God said, I've sent people multiple times to help you. You push them away due to your ego, due to your pride, due to your own personal agenda, due to you thinking that you know it all because you've done this since, I don't know, Adam met Eve. I don't know. But a lot of times the Bible says pride comes before destruction. So when you look at organizations, when you look at projects within the organization, and this project continues to fail, and you're wondering, why is this failing? Why is this failing? You get before God, and God will begin to highlight why this specific area of your organization continues to fall. But if your pride does not allow you to align with God, the Bible says there goes the fall. Right. So you see failure, and it's not that the organization isn't great or they don't put on great programming, but it's just something about it continues to fail. Now, I want to read just a few lines from the text that I created. What is organizational consecration? We'll start there. It's not about spiritualizing meetings. It's about inviting heaven's order into leadership, into your teams, and into your systems. Your position can open doors, but only consecration will keep the walls standing. And this is very powerful because we see a lot of organizations falling. We see a lot of churches coming up and going down. We see a lot of ministries going up and coming down. We see a lot of just restaurants, right? Like, hey, what about that restaurant that and it came down? So we have a lot, and everything isn't warfare. A lot of it is a lack of understanding of leadership. Leadership does not mean I'm the boss and everybody has to bow and do what I say. Leadership is inviting people to the round table to see, okay, we can do a SWOT analysis every now and then. Not saying that nobody wants to take over your organization or your department, but the people that work under you, God put them in there for a reason. So maybe get the advice of people around, how is this work environment? How is this organization making you feel? Do some quality assurance every now and then. And then another thing I want to read before I wrap this organizational leadership piece out, because hear me, this doesn't apply to everybody, and I understand that. But if you do not consecrate, you'll begin to see you building, rebuilding, building, rebuilding, I mean, everything is falling, 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 and you have not wrapped in your mind that maybe I'm the problem. That sounded a little harsh, but just wrapping around, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe people can't work with me. Get in consecration. Get before God, just specifically about your organization as a leader. Why does this thing keep falling, God? So key leadership principles from Nehemiah is consecrated leaders lead with prayer and plans. And what I find is a lot of people have a lot of faith. Listen, they have faith, 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 faith. Somebody gave them a prophetic word, and that's all they ran. Listen, that's all they needed. But as a leader, you have to have a plan. Not only do you have to have a contingency plan, and you have to have a plan when it comes to what if. You never just plan for peaches and berries. You always plan for if it goes bad. And nobody is saying, oh my God, that's you have a they say, oh, you thinking negative. No, I'm thinking as a leader. Leaders lead from the front, the back, and the side, meaning they analyze the entire 360 of that organization. If this happened, what plan do we have in place? If that happened, what plan do we have in place? All right. And then we go to consecrated leaders protect the vision, right? So what do you mean they protect the vision? Remember when earlier in this I was talking about how the people would come into Nehemiah and say, "Hey, my leader wants to meet with you," or this person wants to meet. Sanballat, they want to meet with you. Nehemiah refused to come down from the wall because he was in the middle of a work. When you're a leader, you have to know when it's time to go to lunch with people, when it's time to, because sometimes the time for negotiations are over. The times for mediation is over, past done. We're on a time clock. God has trusted me with this, and this has to be done. All right. You must guard against distractions. You have to know when it's a distraction. Sometimes people don't want to meet with you. Sometimes people don't want to say good and faithful servant, well done, or and maybe they do say that, but you have to know when there is a distraction and when you have to keep going. Delays and demonic allies. There are so many people that will come and shake your hand and nod and pose and take a picture with you who deep down do not like you, and they don't know why they don't like you, but they just don't like you. So what they'll do is they'll sabotage you in the background. And so when you are consecrated, you discern beyond the smile. You discern beyond the handshake. All right. You can see the demonic attack from miles away. Right. And mind you, they can be other leaders. One revelation that I had, and I forget who I was talking about this with, but the Bible says, don't take ungodly counsel. But ungodly counsel can come from a person who appears to be spiritual. And the example that I have for that is when the old prophet went to the, I mean, when the young prophet went to the old prophet, and the Spirit of the Lord gave him specific instructions. Hey, go and tell him this and go the other way. Period. It wasn't to go meet with him, go have lunch with him, whatever. But the old prophet rebuked the young prophet and said, I've been doing this longer than you. Um, and basically made him feel like, you know what? I don't want to disrespect. Some we have all these things to go against what God said, because what we try to do is we want to be humble, right? We want to make sure we don't offend anybody. But soon as the old prophet invited him back to his house, even though God told him, don't do it, do what I told you to do and leave, the young prophet went and sat with the old prophet, and then he died right in the mix of the party. And think about this death though. That was a physical death, but some of us die spiritually doing that. Some of us die confidently doing that. Some of us die because we try to humble ourselves so much that we forget the hand of God, that we forget the instructions of God, that we forget who God called us to be. So you're humble enough to die, but you're not bold enough to live, right? And to build. I'm sorry, I went on the left with that one, but the next thing we have when it comes to key leadership principles of organizational leaders inspired by Nehemiah, I have consecrated leaders create systems that work. That work. So just because you're creating systems and they look good and pretty to you, don't mean they work. So trial and error, you have to be able to adjust and realign every time. You're a leader. It's not for you to just kick your feet up no matter what these documentaries are telling you. You see a lot of our leaders, like the Apple guy, Steve Jobs. You see a lot of Bill Gates, all these leaders, they are on their feet. They are in their employees, but they're not in Cancun chilling. And the problem is a lot of us feel like it's a certain level where we don't have to work anymore. Or I said what I said and that's it. No, is this system working for the team? Is this system working for the vision? What fruit is this system yielding? And then we have fruit of consecrated leadership. So some examples of a fruit is projects that finish strong with God's favor and not burn out. This is so deep, y'all, because people feel like when they are running an organization, at the end of the 5-day revival or the 5-day, they got to be exhausted and, oh, I'm so tired. And, oh, yeah, the Lord was. No, people should not be burnt out. okay? Because you have vetted the systems. A consecrated leader has already saw the vision in 3D. All right. You have, and if you listen, you don't have the gift of administration, hire an administrator and not your auntie who's been working with you for 70 years. Because, well, I don't want to, auntie, she been here from the beginning. And look at what's been going on. It's time for you to consecrate before God and ask God to show you who's going to be working in the administration, who's going to be helping you take the vision off the ground. The problem is a lot of people are stuck in their ways, and that's why they haven't reached where they supposed to reach. And I know I'm speaking from a administrative background. I know I'm speaking from a MBA background, but I'm also speaking from a consecrated background when it comes to organizational leadership. Not only do I know this thing in the practical, but I've studied this thing in the spirit, and I go before God before completing projects. And when I tell you there is no burnout, I still can function as a mom, wife, and I mean highly function because I know systems. And a lot of people just reject systems for some reason and they blame it on the Holy Ghost. Okay, I'm gonna move on because I feel like I got a little passionate there. But consecrated leaders have created systems that work, and there is fruit of a consecrated leader um, that does not result in burnout. At the end of this, we have activation questions, of course. So the activation questions are for you to go read and sup with God and ask God these critical questions concerning organizational leadership. And it's also a prayer of consecration, just in case you don't know how to start off your prayer before you get with God. So I want to thank you guys again for your time. I know sometimes I come a little strong, but this is for organizational leaders. And if you're not an organizational leader, I understand how this didn't work for you. But meet us on the other side as we continue to work through this consecration camp, giving tips with biblical mentors for you to follow. If you haven't already, please check out our e-commerce store and see how you can support the organization. If not, we still love you because the will of God is going to get done. All right. And for now, we'll see you soon. God bless you and enjoy the rest of your evening.